So welcome everybody. I'm not going to give a very long introduction because we have a lot of great people who have a lot of great things to say, but I think the mandate of this conversation is really just about how in the last 5 years, businesses, it's really become a must for businesses to talk about and hopefully act on sustainability, social justice. They're realizing that there's money to be made doing that. I have actually always been, one of the reasons I think I was chosen to do this panel is because I have always been very, very interested in this piece, and that for a long time, as we talked about the food movement and talked about changing food culture, it was about small, 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 and big was bad, and those were sort of easy shortcuts, right? And, while I am a huge supporter of small-scale farming, we really have to scale up if we're gonna make a difference, and we're gonna make a difference fast enough. And also in my time covering this, it was very interesting. There was a very us and them kind of mentality. It's like if you're at a big company, you're against us, right? And I think that more and more people are realizing that isn't the case, but I think the question is what kinds of commitments are businesses making and what kind of impacts and how can they be held to account? So we have a really great panel. I'm gonna start here right next to me. So Brigette, tell me a little bit about what you're doing at SnackFutures Innovation. It's part of Mondelez. So what is it and why are you doing it now?
So by way of context, for those that may or may not know Mondelez International, you are probably familiar with the cookie that we make that you twist, lick, and dunk called Oreo, or chocolates by the name of Cadbury. So very big, global big brands. The division that I'm leading in innovation, SnackFutures, we created last year. It's an independent innovation and venture hub. It was designed to push the boundaries in snacking, which meant disrupting ourselves as a big company, going to where consumers were in a really hyper-centric way and addressing what's going on in today's environment, and starting from that to think and behave like a startup, to partner with startups as part of our ecosystem, and to move at lightning speed. So that's kind of our mission and how we're working. We've created actually several brands this year that we're really proud of that are speaking to kind of this environmental impact. And it is in the bigger context of where Mondelez International is going in making sustainability commitments. We have a significant program of Cocoa Life that we can talk about, our packaging commitments for 2025 to be all sustainable. Our Harmony Wheat in Europe is all sustainable. And the big piece to that is, while we can do some really amazing things in SnackFutures, which is where we're trying to go, we just launched in test market a brand called Cacao, which is all about taking, if you think of the chocolate supply chain, the cocoa fruit, the cacao, actually gets wasted, that pulp, when you get the beans. So we're taking the pulp and the rest of it to upcycle that into snacks, and we're testing it. We have another brand that's in test market called Dirt Kitchen Snacks, and that's plant forward, trying to rescue veggies and do other things with vegetables and plant forward. And they're amazing, and we're so proud of it because it's where consumers are going. At the same time, what we talk about with big is you don't move that needle that fast in the beginning. Like every startup, as we keep telling management, it's going to take a time for us to get to the scale of everywhere else. So the impact is where it is the Oreo and the Cadbury's of the world make the impact, because when an elephant moves an inch, it has a very big impact in the jungle than when the little ones go, the ants go. So that's really important for us, is to build that supply chain.
Because that was sort of what we were talking about backstage, because it's this issue is, right, there's like a lot of new shiny things that people are launching. We're launching new brands, and but it's such a drop in the bucket compared to all the Oreos that are out there. And I actually, as far as, I don't know if we would call it junk food, but as junk food goes, Oreos are my one non-negotiable food in the world. They're my favorite cookie. But so do you?
It helps mental health.
Yes, exactly. It's the twisting. And so I guess my question is, is somebody looking at this in holistic and saying, okay, we're moving this far, and this is how far Oreo or Cadbury or whoever takes us, and this is how far Cacao takes us? Because I think the concern is that the headlines come from a new brand and that not that much changes behind the scenes.
I think the most striking thing that I've seen is, where can we make the biggest difference with focus? And that's at the enterprise level. So someone will say, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? And we get all these questions. And to be honest, there's a million things you can do when you can boil the ocean. So the Cocoa Life program that we've selected, that is a material impact. We've helped 140,000 farmers in 1,400 communities. It's putting bathrooms in schools so that the girls can go every day of every month. It's basically elevating those farmers where they can get more yield and more earning. My mic's not working. You hear me now? Ooh, sorry about that. I talk fast and you missed all of it, but that's okay. What we were just saying is basically on the big is, it's really important to focus where you can make the biggest impact. And for us, one of those examples is in Cocoa Life, because we do use so much about it. And cocoa as a raw ingredient is going to those farmers, 140,000 farmers in 1,400 communities, teaching them better agricultural practices to get higher yield so that they can earn more, but it also uses less land and less natural resources. It means elevating the community and the earnings so that the women are getting educated and they're the business leaders often in the community. It's about putting bathrooms into schools so the girls can go every single day. So that big focus is really important. I think the other piece of having the small and the big in both is there's a bit of an aspirational. The small is like we can start from scratch and do everything holier than thou, and we can try and do that small. It's harder to do that and everything, but every inch that these big companies can move has a really sizable impact, and that's where we're trying to focus. The other challenge is there's more we can do. Yes, there's always more, but there's only so much, and if you spread everything really thin, you're going to do nothing good.
Right.
So
well, I wanted to that's a perfect segue because I wanted to ask Shayna, who has worked both at big food companies like Mars and also is working at Farmer's Fridge, which we're going to have to get you to explain briefly. Yes. I mean, I already see the clock ticking down. So, could you talk to us a little bit about why it's so much easier to start a new supply chain from scratch? Because you'd think that would be hard, right? Rather than shifting one, and then a little bit about how that's affected what you're doing with Farmer's Fridge.
Absolutely. So I'll explain elevator pitch Farmer's Fridge. We're a food tech company out of Chicago that vends fresh, healthy food. So about 400 locations in the Midwest and growing, but we were founded about 6 years ago. I made the pivot. I've worked in international supply chains my whole career. I was in international development, went in-house at Mars to work on rebuilding the cocoa supply chain, which was an incredible time period, and we did a lot of really wonderful work, but started to think a lot about the products that I was making. And when I had my daughter 4.5 years ago, decided that I wanted to build a company that would make food that I would be proud to feed her every day. I love chocolate, don't get me wrong, but I was thinking a lot about her nutrition. And so I joined the founder of Farmer's Fridge when we just had about a handful of locations. And really it was, how do you build the whole system from the ground up, focused on this ethos of doing good? Being aware of what we can do as a private company, and then how do we collaborate with others in this space, government, et cetera, to push the needle forward. But so one of the big things we've been doing is focused on building our supply chain. And what that means for us is, so we manage 150 raw ingredients every single day. So it's not big commodities, it's fruits, vegetables, nuts, grains, all plant-forward menu, and then we have animal protein add-ons. So how do we, as a small but growing player, actually start to build those relationships? So when we started, it was as simple as go to the farmer's market and then build a relationship with your kale supplier in Michigan. And as we grew, we got into this middle ground where you're working with aggregators to bring your products in, because you don't have a huge staff, and you have 150 of them to manage. And so how do you start to create some standards early on which allow your suppliers to give you the products that you want? So there, what we've really done is we focused on quality, and we focused on just seasonality. So in the Midwest, in Chicago, which is where we have our production facility, you can't get lettuce all year round, as you know, as a Chicagoan. But what we can do is partner with maple syrup suppliers, and in the fall rotate in a seasonal apple, and have dried cherries from Michigan all year round, so we can provide seasonal flavors and then ingredients that have a longer shelf life all year round that are coming directly from small businesses. So what we've really focused on is, as a small business that's grown, how do we partner with small suppliers and help them to grow their businesses along with ours against a set of environmental and social principles that we're all excited about? And that doesn't mean there's a silver bullet. So it's not focused on one thing, but how do we together grow our businesses?
But I also think one of the things that I know about your company is, and you talk about yourself as a tech company, and there's apps and things that you use. But tell them about the bummer button and how that actually helps you with your supply chain.
Yeah, so a big component of having a fresh food company is that you're going to have waste. And this is why it's very hard to grow fresh food and maintain quality at scale. So what we've done since the beginning is we've known that data would play a big role in how we allocate supply. Everything from our ingredients coming in, transforming those ingredients and composting any of the waste, to what we put in the fridge and how we allocate, because each location has its own unique mix of merchandise. So we use an algorithm on the back end to help us learn over time what should be supplied so we can minimize waste. But then you stay on the risk of a new person moves into an office building, they want an item that's never there. So in our user interface, because this is all automated, there's a button that says, bummed, I wanted that item. And we get millions of pieces of data on an ongoing basis that is helping us to refine what we're supplying.
Right, to minimize. And it's an interesting thing, because if you think about restaurants, right, it's always that mystery, like, how does the restaurant know how many people are going to order the steak?
Yes.
And they say, well, just over time you figure it out, right? But, now you're sort of getting this instant feedback, which is helping you with your supply chain and to sort of not only serve your customer better, but to minimize waste, which I think is really interesting. Karl, I'm not forgetting about you, but I'm just going to jump to Jyoti for one thing, which is I want to talk, just talking about this sort of cultural sense and sort of big supply chains. I mean, you're with Nature's Path, it's a family company, it's a private company, and it has been built from the ground up with a very strong mission. So I just wanted you to speak a little bit about the culture, because I think that that's one of the things that people feel about big food companies, right, is that, well, you were making all this junk food and now you want to make sustainable, but is that culturally part of the brand's identity? So talk to us a little bit about how that has helped you and in your decision making.
Sure. So my dad grew up on a berry farm on Vancouver Island, and a lot of the neighboring farmers were starting to apply, pesticides, chemical pesticides and fertilizers. He was a follower of Albert Rodale, and he proudly displayed a sign on his farm that said, "No sprays or poisons used." He told my dad to always leave the soil better than he found it, and that has really formed the basis of what we're trying to do at Nature's Path. Our mission is to leave the earth better than we found it, and we've looked at ways to build that into how we do business, whether it's looking at our packaging, our supply chain, so 100% of our products are certified organic, our commitment to fair trade ingredients for all of the cocoa that we use, packaging reduction. We signed on to the Ellen MacArthur New Plastics Economy pledge to have all of our packaging compostable, reusable, or recyclable by 2025, and we're about 97% of the way there with our supply chain. But in order to do a lot of this work, it's not one person dictating it, it's really getting our team to buy into the ethos of the company. And that's really what especially younger people want. They want to feel a connection to purpose. It's really about making that line between what you're doing on a day-to-day basis and the impact that it has on the planet.
But I just think it's really interesting, made me think after we spoke in advance of the panel, which is just that, there's a difference between sort of changing a supply chain from sort of conventional to sustainable than kind of building a bigger and better sustainable supply chain, because there are some things that are just never options because they're filtered out, and there's a changing of minds. And I guess I just want to open it up to anybody to sort of say, what does that mean? Because a lot of this is about a mindset, right? And it's about it's people making decisions and feeling that they have cover to do something different that may or may not work out, as opposed to business as usual, right? And so I would like to know, given that our food system is dominated by so many big companies, what does that mean? We don't have every company that is Nature's Path, and we can't expect Farmer's Fridge yet to replace, X or Y, name your big food company. So what does that mean? How is the culture shifting inside of these businesses? Where are we on the spectrum of change?
2 seconds. I think when you think about consumer advocacy and consumer information and the choice that's happening, it is in the interest of, it's in the interest of business to do this, because consumers are voting with their dollars and they care. And the more that there is a consumer consciousness, you're seeing this now more and more, and you saw with the Business Roundtable, there's kind of this corporate consciousness that's finally kicking in about more of a stakeholder alignment versus just the shareholders. Mondelēz, we were saying backstage, we announced, as many have, Mars did as well as here, around our purpose, which is snacking made right. And in that, there is inherent attention of when are you doing something right? And then the flip side is, well, that costs money. And it's typically that costs money, or it needs resources, or we have to change a line or a whole program. And it's not easy. But I think for us, it helps having a CEO put the stake out there to say, you're going to have that air cover to find ways. Now, is it all overnight? No. But is it in increments of where we can say material change in certain areas, that this is important, this is the right thing to do? And frankly, it's cheaper than going out of business when everyone votes you out one day, too. So that's, sometimes that loss is also a pretty good measure of what can I avoid versus also what can I gain. And I think that conversation is one. And I think the other piece is, companies are made of people. Sometimes we do forget, we yell at the company, but the companies are made of human individuals working day in, day out. You had a daughter 4 years ago. I have a 10 and a 7-year-old. They come home and tell me I can't put their snacks in plastic bags, so we've shifted. They want to compost at lunch. So there is a inherent pieces as an employee. I want to see a future of my company, serving my family the foods that I want in the way that I want, protecting the environment for their next generation as well.
Right, yeah, I mean, I just guess I'm sort of skeptical, and I think it probably everyone is, that, you hear a lot of, well, it's the right thing to do. And it was like, well, it was always the right thing to do. But it didn't always get done. And so, I mean, I'm wondering, Jyoti, you wanted to say something about that?
Yeah, I mean, so organic is really a pillar of our business, and it has been since day one. But even if I look at acceptance of our sustainability platform in our program, when we started in 2008 to where it is now, there's been a sea change of acceptance within the company, the desire to want to do more. So you are seeing that change even within companies that have that strong core of looking at all of your practices within your organization, whether it's waste reduction, packaging changes, furthering organic practices. There's just an appetite for it right now. People are excited about it.
And it is somewhat of a moving target as well. I mean, talk about the tone at the top, which is very important, but several times today already it's been mentioned about the, the European economic imperative to reduce food waste. Well, there's also one on reducing or minimizing single-use plastics.
I know, I have my circular economy notes right here to ask you about.
That tone completely changed 2 years ago. Even the CEO of Tesco, Dave Lewis, in 2017, they had a very aggressive reduction in food waste scheme and packaging, and at the time a fair amount of that was single-use plastics, was held as the enabler for that. And it was an amazing amount of food waste that they were reducing. Up to 40% of the in-store wasted product was being minimized. With, you mentioned Ellen MacArthur, once they, put out the thing on that's going to be more plastics in the ocean than sea life by 2050, that changed the tone. A year later, his thing was, we now need to minimize single-use plastics. These things aren't separated. They can commingle, but it takes innovation, it takes technology, and it takes time, and it takes investment. And you have to be committed to get there.
Well, that was my question sort of specifically for you, because the question was, it's interesting because you talk a lot about how the packaging can reduce food waste, right? But then on the other hand, you have a problem because you have all this packaging. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing to change the packaging so that we get the benefits of the food, of less food waste, but also not crazy amounts of plastic.
And I guess I'm part of the inclusion, having a packaging company at a food tank. But we do believe we're part of the solution. We have a long history of producing and having technologies that minimize food waste and also protect food safety, and we've been very proud of that. But obviously now with the tone changing and the focus changing, it's not good enough. So we do need to do better, and we are reducing recycling, using recycled content, using naturally available materials, whether it be from sugar cane or corn not meant for animal production or for human production, so it's not taking food out of the environment or ecosystem as well. All of those are technologies that can strive to getting to a more circular economy. But it all plays in, because it's circular from basically from the land and water conservation all the way up to the materials that are used to help protect the product and get wholesome, nutritious food to the people who need it and economically viable.
Do you have any sort of initial impact statistics? I know you've done a lot of work with Tesco, but in the amount of plastic and packaging you've been able to eke out of the system without losing the benefits that it's offering?
Absolutely. Actually, historically, just as food production has become much more productive, the packaging industry has become much more productive. We're probably producing a lot more products today at significantly less, 20-30% less raw materials. So we're making materials much thinner and much more functional. That obviously makes it more difficult to recycle them. So now we're very much involved in innovating the materials to make them more recyclable.
Wait, sorry, why does making them thinner make them harder to recycle?
So we make materials that may have 13, 14 different layers to be able to make them very thin as well as very functional.
Okay.
And in doing that, then it, that's why everyone recycles PET water bottles, or they're supposed to. Only about 50% of them get recycled, even with infrastructure there. But they made out of a single resin. It's much easier to recycle a single resin. So we're converting our technologies. We're using innovation that will allow the materials to be reused, reprocessed, to be mechanical recycled when that makes sense, and to be or chemical recycled, which basically takes them back down to their molecules where that makes sense. But there's not enough infrastructure, like 19,000 recycle centers in North America.
Right.
Of the population that has free recycling, only 50% of the people recycle. So there's consumer awareness, there's consumer education, and there's infrastructure to get to the ultimate solution, but at multiple stages. I mean, we've made great progress in 2 years. We have products that a year ago were 100% virgin resins that are now 90+% recycled resins.
I mean, I guess my question is, I see a lot more of the cutting edge and progressive stuff happening in Europe, and partly that's because they have more sophisticated consumers when it comes to, environmental issues, but part of it is that the EU is passing rules that say, I mean, I'm reading this off my little cheat sheet, 55% of packaged plastic waste has to be recycled, sorting and recycling capacity has to be increased 4-fold. This is all part of their circular economy package. So, I mean, let's face it, that's forcing you to do this. Mm-hmm. So what do we need to see happen in this country? And as part, I'm putting you on the spot, but as part of your business here, are you advocating for that type of infrastructure? Because I mean, we have so many plastics, we don't have enough recycling plants. It's just going in the landfill. So
absolutely, and so
thank you.
I don't know if they were my detractors or my fans.
I don't know.
I have a guess.
I just think if someone claps, then I say thank you.
But we're providing that leadership. We're a member of a number of alliances and industry groups. We're taking the leadership you talked about from our CEO down. We're heavily engaged. We're members of a whole variety of groups that are working towards in the investment and sponsoring these type initiatives, because we have to be.
But I mean, are you working at a state level? Are you supporting candidates that support? I mean, because one of the things, and I will ask this to everybody, this is sort of my pet peeve at the moment, right? So, you have these people in innovation, roles and in marketing roles and in all these things. And then you've got the lobbyists, right? And I have no idea if those people are talking to the other people. So, here you've got a company like, I just saw this, Microsoft and Facebook and all these people who have these environmental sustainability goals, but then they're giving money to Mitch McConnell, who has never brought a climate bill to the floor ever. So, my question is, regardless of whether, you're Mitch McConnell, fill in any politician, is, if we're for recycling, are we looking at who we're giving money to and making sure that they're acting on that? And is that a way that we can that business can do good?
Right. And business does want to do good, because doing good is good business. But even some of the legislation, it makes it much more difficult because it's so variable as well. You have Germany putting in one set of laws and the UK putting in a different set of laws. And in between, you have retailers putting in their own initiatives. And what is considered 100% recyclable in Australia is completely different than what's considered 100% recyclable in the UK. So it does make it somewhat more difficult. So, working and I'll call it campaigning or advocating for good science is very important, but it's still today a very emotional topic. And I do like turtles as well, and we don't make straws. Going back to the first speaker.
I know.
And a straw is absolutely useless unless you have a disability that requires you to use a straw to drink. So, I mean, there are functionalities that need to be preserved, but it's not an easy topic. It's going to keep us busy for a while, but one that we're absolutely committed to addressing.
I throw this open to you, Brigette and Jyoti. I know you were saying that you've actually come to Washington, even though you're Canadian, and lobbied on issues that are important to you. And I want to understand from you as well how it's connected. How those two parts of the business are connected. But Jyoti, do you want to just start with that?
Sure. I mean, my dad and I went to Capitol Hill last year to put our support behind carbon tax.
So what do you think?
We really feel that's.
I think your microphone's on over there, I believe. So.
We really feel that having a carbon tax is the most effective way to. Carbon tax. It's backstage.
Someone has a mic on somewhere.
All right.
Okay. Just talk louder.
Okay. Is really the most effective way to move climate action forward. And we spoke to it from the perspective of being a business based in British Columbia, where we do have a carbon tax. And it is the second fastest growing economy in Canada. So, there's a lot of fear around it's going to slow down the economy, business is going to shut down, but we were able to share our example, being from a province that has one, that it hasn't hurt our economy, and in fact, our economy is growing very strongly with the carbon tax in place.
Right. And Brigette, do you feel like there's any connection between the people who are working on Capitol Hill and you and SnackFutures, like a conversation, and are you working to support this politically? Because I just feel like so many people just have no idea what to do with the political situation, and it feels like it's being controlled by someone else. So it would be great if the people who had sway were speaking, to power.
I will be transparent because I don't know everything that we do on the Hill. And I'm sure we have several conversations, and the head of our sustainability does work in forums with everyone. So it's an ongoing industry thing. I think there's the mandate, but I also think there's a little bit of, I had an epiphany the other day, I went to go throw something out, right? Because we've all been trained not to litter, but the most recyclable package that somebody challenged me is it doesn't matter if it's 98% made of recycled material and it's 100% recyclable if you throw it in the trash can, So I think there's budding entrepreneurs and municipalities. We need to figure out how do you get as many recyclable stations as well out? All this packaging stuff is often because it had to be portable and it had to be safe and it had to be portioned. And it's all fabulous consumer needs. We then need to figure out that infrastructure. So I think what we're also, that I do know is having those conversations, how do you have that back cycle as well? So if you're going to manufacture it, how do you close the loop with both the education and the infrastructure?
So I'm going to give Shayna the last word, but then I'm going to open it up to questions, just a couple of questions, so I'm sure you guys have them, but I know you're using reusable packaging, so send us out on a happy, positive note.
I was going to say, definitely can understand all of the different dynamics going on and how it takes kind of a cross-industry effort to make the change. We've just tried to do what we can as a small but growing company, hopefully mighty soon, and we've built recycling infrastructure into our fridges, and it's a round hole that's the size of the jar, so you know exactly what to put in there, and have partnered with our municipal recycler to understand what the packaging needs to look like to have the greatest likelihood of being recycled. But one of the things we really advocate with our consumers is reuse of the jars. They're great quality, and we get a lot of that, and I actually think
so when
that's
I
the
get my
biggest
salad in a jar or my yogurt in a jar, I can put it back
You
in
can
the vending
recycle
machine.
it in the vending machine.
Or I can take it
Or you
home.
can take it and use it, and people use it to store their dice or their kids' lunch for the next day, or all sorts of fun things. So we've, while we're part of the larger conversation and working with some across industry groups to really understand what we can do with our packaging, and that's, I think, going to constantly be a conversation. Just trying to also think about what can we genuinely do today, and yes, it costs us more money. Our drivers are gathering those, bringing them back. We have a waste basket built into every single machine.
And do they get
something we can
recycled, or do they get cleaned and reused, sterilized and reused?
So they get recycled from a food safety perspective because you can't, Jyoti and I were talking about this a lot.
We signed on to the Loop platform. So the containers that we are using right now are being sterilized and reused, and it was a big process to go through as a certified organic food company to figure out, what types of detergents that you can use within the jars to make sure that you retain your certification and there's no residue. So that is a program that we're piloting to try to move along in the circular economy.
Big and small, we've got that going in Europe on our biscuits. So at least there's programs that will help.
Yeah. So we talked too long, so we really have 3 minutes. So do I have any questions? I see a question here in the white shirt middle. So I'm going to really ask that it's a question, not a comment, so that we have time to answer it.
Hi, everyone. This is a great opportunity for us to learn about all the great things that you guys are doing, and I think it's very encouraging and great to hear that you're doing so many things in terms of sustainable farming practices and recycling and women's empowerment, and that's really great. I come from a nutrition background, and a lot of the times we see that there's really a gap in the information between the health of our soil, the food production, the foods that we eat, and therefore health and nutrition. A lot of it is because, one, lack of awareness, and two, because a lot of the times there's not enough funding for these type of research to happen. So my question to you guys is, how do you see your businesses doing good for specifically nutrition in terms of whether that is advertising, creating awareness, the infrastructure within your organization or your policies? Thank you.
I'm going to answer that one because that's why we founded our company, so I'm glad you asked that. But we serve only fresh foods that are plant-forward and they're whole foods, and we prescribe to Michael Pollan's philosophy around that. So for us, it's really about how do you get people their classics that they're familiar with that are plant-forward and highly nutritious. So in our menu, we have a Southwest quinoa bowl, we have a falafel bowl, we have salads, Cobb salads that are familiar. And if you eat an item at Farmer's Fridge, the goal for us is to move you closer to your daily nutritionals of the good things you want to eat and get out those bad things you don't want to eat. And so you eat one of our salads and you've got 50% of your daily value fruits and vegetables in it. So for us, it was really an R&D challenge from the beginning. How do we create a menu that's responding to America's nutritional needs or nutritional deficits, but giving them familiar flavors that they want to eat? So we've designed it from the ground up.
So I'll come from the other end of the spectrum, since we've called out our world's favorite cookie. As a perpetual dieter and trying to teach healthy habits, it really is trying to get the world is full of choices, and how do we be more mindful? So we talked about kapow and Dark Kitchen, which are explicitly healthy snacks, and I put them in quotes because a piece of chocolate is one of my most sanity-saving mental health things. But knowing the size and the tablet, so having mindful portions that we're putting on, giving not just kind of calories and grams, but visual infographics so a consumer knows what a serving is and how many biscuits or how many pieces of the tablet, so they visually know when to stop, or pre-portioning or having those dial-ins work where people can know when to stop eating, being always transparent with, I think just big companies, we are always transparent with all the nutrition standards and guidelines, and then trying to clean up too, reducing the sugar, putting in cleaner ingredients, and each one of those is evolving the base business.
That's all the time we have. I vote for 2 Oreo packages, even though that means more packaging, but I think they should be portion controlled in that way. I want to thank our panel and thank you for listening.